Namaste nerds, this is Navinad, the Budget Pub Stomper, and today we're going to be talking about the game changers, or some of the game changers, a list of game changers. And we're going to be talking about the ways that we might substitute some cards in place of these game changers. And I'm trying to come at that from sort of two perspectives at the same time. We're going to be not just talking about budget replacements, although that's going to be a part of it. That's kind of like my expertise, I guess you'd say. But it's also going to be substitutes that just happen to not be on the list of game changers. So if you're trying to build a bracket 3 deck, for instance, and you need to use some version of an effect that isn't pointed or isn't on the game changers list, I'm going to provide you some substitutes, some options. Now, I'm looking at specifically this chunk of game changers, and partially that's because they are just the ones that I think tend to come to mind most, or definitely did when I was just compiling the list. But I think it's also because they're the ones that are more representative of other cards, or the most cards that are on the game changers list in total. Like for instance, yeah, we've got Force of Will, and we don't have Fierce Guardianship here. But Force of Will can kind of be a stand-in for Fierce Guardianship. Or you could say like Force of Will and Deflecting Swat together. Between the two of these, you can imagine that just about whatever substitution or whatever substitutes that we can come up with that could replace Deflecting Swat and Force of Will would also be good stand-ins, just about by definition. Would like basically have to be good stand-ins for Fierce Guardianship, because what we're really talking about here is we're talking about free interaction, right? And if you're not talking about free interaction when we're looking at these two cards, then we're talking about redirection. And so if I have a list of cards that will be free interaction and or redirect spells, then we've kind of covered the Deflecting Swat and the Force of Will, but then we've sort of covered some of the other cards on the list too, if you catch my drift. And the same is true, like I almost didn't put the One Ring on here. I slapped it on at the end because like the cards that you're going to play, there's not going to be an actual substitute for the One Ring. There's not like some, $5 version of the One Ring that is the same card except it costs 5 mana instead of 4. Although maybe there are some things that are kind of like that. Mostly it's not like that. So the kinds of cards that we're going to try to play in our decks to replace Rhystic Study, it's also going to be the same. That's going to be a card that's going to replace Rhystic Study or the One Ring. And maybe to a greater or lesser degree, depending on context, which we are going to talk about. They could also be the same cards that we're using to replace Necropotence or Necropotence, however you want to say it. Ad nauseam, same kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you might use ad nauseam. Some of the ways, though, are going to be very similar to how you would use Necropotence. The thing is, not all of the ways are going to be the same. So just as an example, maybe we have a deck that where we want to try to fire off a Necro for 30 at the end of the turn, and then cast like a spell that allows us to play at instant speed and then win the game. That's going to be like a kind of different context than using a Necropotence to just kind of keep your hands full of cards. So some of the cards that we're going to be using on the game changer substitutes might be substitutes for some of the ways you'd use ad nauseam and some of the ways you would use Necropotence. And then other cards might be substitutes for ways that we would otherwise be using Necro or otherwise be using ad nauseam. Sometimes decks in cEdh will fire off an ad nauseam literally just as a win condition. Like you're just going to, well, I guess not literally, but you're going to fire off an ad nauseam either in step, especially post Dockside banning. It'll normally be in step. But maybe your cEdh deck is built to fire off an in-step ad nauseam, untap, and then just win the game. Well, there's a game changer substitute that I've got on the list that is Shared Summons that is going to kind of take the place of that. So in a lot of decks, you can use shared summons the same way you would in a lot of decks use ad nauseam. So if your ad nauseam is meant to instep, fire off the ad nause, to go to your untap and your turn and just win the game with an A plus B combo, very often shared summons is going to do the work. It's going to do that exact job for you. But then in other situations or in other cases, you might be using ad nauseam just to draw a ton of cards, in which case that's not exactly in that case shared summons is not going to do that job for you. So yeah, a lot of this ends up being very context dependent. So I don't know that it's going to make sense to go through and do like a this card is going to replace this card, and this card is going to replace that card. But if we look at the list of game changers, and then we look at some of the substitutes, and I'm going to try to provide some of my wonderful and powerful insights that I've picked up over my many moons of being a budget pub stomper, a budget pub stomper, to kind of fill in and provide these invaluable sets of context. The same thing with like Time Twister. So Time Twister, some of the time, I'm going to demonstrate this. Some of the time, Time Twister is used as a win condition. Now, there are cards that will do the same job that Time Twister can do, like for doing these Twister loops, but it's those cards that can do the Twister loops. I'm going to actually put one in right now. What is it called? Magic Mirror? What's the damn, it's clock, Midnight Clock. Okay. So, some decks, some of the time, will use their Time Twister because they don't want to put a bunch of useless cards in their deck to win the game. When they're ready to win, they want to have some cards that are otherwise effective cards, and then they want to be able to use those otherwise effective cards to sort of cobble a win together. For instance, Urza. If you're playing cEdh Urza, you're not playing Thassa's Oracle in the deck. Yes, you're going to go infinite mana, and you're going to have the ability to effectively draw your deck, basically draw your deck out. But there's just no sense then in sticking Thassa's Oracle in the deck so that you have this win condition. Because if you have infinite mana and you've drawn your entire deck, if you put a little thought into it ahead of time, you should not need to have specifically assigned win conditions to win the game after you've gone infinite mana and drawn your deck. It should be pretty much an afterthought. So a card like Time Twister, once you've gotten infinite mana and you've drawn your deck, or you've went infinite mana with Urza so you can exile your entire deck and cast it however you want, you can use Time Twister to do what are called Twister loops, where maybe you will cast a cantrip and you'll counter it with a Swan Song, and then you'll make a 2/2 bird, and then you will cast Time Twister again, and you'll reshuffle all of your cards, exile them all so that you can play them all, and you will cast a cantrip and you will counterspell it with your bird, and then you'll go through that loop over and over and over, and you'll make an infinite army of 2/2s, so that you didn't have to play any useless cards like Thassa's Oracle that don't have any text when you're not trying to win the game. And you can do that type of a loop with a card like Midnight Clock. So if you're playing a budget version of Urza, let's say we're playing a version of Urza that is using Hullbreaker Horror to go infinite mana by casting and recasting mana rocks. Okay, so some versions of cEdh Urza will do this, and surely some budget versions of cEdh Urza will do this. You'll have like you'll have your Urza in play. So all of your 0 cast artifacts are basically mock sapphires, right? Then you get like a Soul Ring, and you will have your Hullbreaker Horror in play. You'll tap one of your 0 cast artifacts for 1 blue mana. You'll use that blue mana to cast a Soul Ring. When you cast the Soul Ring, you're going to trigger the first ability here, where it says return target spell. No, second. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand to pick up the 0 mana bauble, whatever it is that you're using as your quasi-mock sapphire. You'll use the cast trigger on the Hullbreaker Horror, the casting of the Soul Ring to trigger the Hullbreaker Horror to return the 0 mana artifact to your hand. Then you're going to tap the Soul Ring for 2 mana. Then you're going to cast the 0 mana bauble, and you're going to use the Hullbreaker Horror to bounce the Soul Ring up back into your hand. And you're going to keep doing that over and over until you've got infinite mana. Well, once you've got infinite mana with Urza, this isn't actually on the list. I just wanted to show you the card. Well, once you're in that little situation, you don't necessarily need Time Twister. You can use Midnight Clock without having to put win conditions in your deck. You can do Twister loops with the Midnight Clock by using the infinite mana to put hour counters on the Midnight Clock, and then when you've got the 12th hour counter on the clock, you're going to sacrifice this, or what does it say? When the 12th hour is put on it, you shuffle it into you shuffle this artifact, your hand, and your graveyard, into your library, and then draw 7 cards. Okay, so with this effect, with that on the stack, but before it actually gets exiled, you will cast another spell with your Hullbreaker Horror still in play to bounce the Midnight Clock into your hand. And so then you can basically use the Midnight Clock as a Time Twister for running Twister loops. But it's not going to be a Time Twister in that you can use it as a draw 7 that you can just cast from hand. I don't know if there might have been a less wordy way to explain what I was trying to get at there, but hopefully that made some sense. So we're not going to be able, I guess this is a point, you're not going to be able to just say, look, for every deck you have where you used to play Demonic Tutor, just play this card instead. It's just not going to work that way. Or for every deck that you used to play Rhystic Study in, now that we have to pay attention to this Game Changers list, or now that you've switched to budget competitive, or now that you lost your job, now we're going to just always play this other card instead. It just isn't going to work that way. So we're going to have some context, and I'm going to try to bring some of that context into the video while we're explaining how you might want to go about replacing some of these very expensive and pointed cards with less expensive and not pointed cards. And when I say pointed, I'm kind of thinking in terms of like Canadian Highlander or some other. I'm talking about the cards in Commander that now have some status as a game changer. Because you can only use some certain number of game changers in the different brackets. I only play cEdh and budget competitive where we don't worry about points, not points, but a number of game changers. But if you hear me talk about points, if I accidentally say that, when I'm using pointed, I just mean it is a card that has been given special status as being more powerful than other cards to the point where we have to track it separately, like the Game Changers list. Fair? Hopefully that made some sense. There's not just going to be a card that every time you played Jessica's Will before, you're going to play this card instead. The only card that would be like that would be Jessica's Will. You can come, I guess, kind of close to that with exactly Time Twister, at the risk of ruining my entire example. But which one do we want to... I think I'm done with that. Either you followed it or you didn't, or you followed it to some degree. Ask questions in the comments. I'm happy to point out what my lunacy actually meant. So let's talk about Rhystic Study. I think this is one that people talk about probably, well, it's like Cyclonic Rift and Rhystic Study. These are two of the most difficult ones to change, to substitute, to replace, right? There really is no perfect one-for-one, especially not on a budget, and ones that are not pointed or aren't also game changers. So I think that they're two of the ones that are most worth discussing. So I guess we need to look at the context for Cyclonic Rift or Rhystic Study. Rhystic Study is a little bit simpler. I mean, it's just there as a draw engine. So let's talk about Cyclonic Rift first. Okay, so what is it about Cyclonic Rift exactly that we're trying to get out of Cyclonic Rift when we put it in our deck? And there's a couple things that you could you could say the fact that it can be a one-sided board wipe is probably far and away is the most important factor of it to most people, or has been the most important factor of the card to most people at most times. How we doing on time? Speaking of time, not as good as I'd hoped. Okay, so we're not doing great on time. So yeah, the main thing that most people most of the time refer to as the powerful part about Cyclonic Rift, and the reason it commands this game changer status and this $33.85 minimum price tag, I think is the fact that it's a one-sided, they call it a one-sided board wipe. It's actually more like a three-sided board wipe, but it's a not U-sided board wipe. It is an asymmetrical board wipe. And so if you want the card, because it's an asymmetrical board wipe, that is one thing. But if you want the card exactly because of its versatility, that's kind of another thing. If you want to use that card in your deck because of specific matchups that you have trouble with, let me give you an example. I play a cEdh deck, Malcolm Tana, and the deck is very powerful. It can get off to some very fast wins. Sometimes as early as turn 2 or 3, it'll threaten a win. Sometimes it'll put a win on the stack turn 2, but that's rare. Less rare, it'll try to win on turn 3. But most of the time, if I'm being proactive, it's going to try to win the game on turn 3 or 4. But it's got this problem where there are kind of multiple stacks pieces that can shut the deck just about completely down. Like the deck, my Malcolm Tana deck really cannot win through like a number of cards. I literally cannot win the game through an Orcish Bowmasters. I don't know if I have any win conditions that will allow me to win the game if there's an Orcish Bowmasters in play under my opponent's control. And another, I guess there are, the other example I'm thinking of is Collector Roof. Now, I do have ways to win through a Collector Roof, but I've got lots of ways to win the deck that don't win through Collector Roof. So we can say pretty safely that if somebody has a Collector Oof in play, and then somebody else has a Orcish Bowmasters in play, I'm kind of boned there. Like, I have to be able to answer both of those cards, and if I've got one tutor, say Muddle the Mixture, I've got to be able to find one card that will take out both of those pieces on two different players' boards for me to try to win. And so that's why I play Cyclonic Rift in that deck. There's a lot of players that play cEdh decks that never get close to having the ability to pay 7 mana to overload a Cyc Rift, and they want Cyc Rift for a different reason. Sometimes they'll maybe cast that part of the Cyc Rift, but they were playing Cyc Rift more because it's like an unconditional bounce spell with no real downside, and it's got this extra bit of text that maybe occasionally comes up for them. So those are two different situations. Somebody might want the card because it's just a bounce spell that can take out any kind of permanent that's not a land. And somebody else might want the Cyc Rift, like myself, because it can take out multiple pieces in one card, with one tutor or just with one top deck. Those are different situations, and they're going to call for different substitutes. But I'm going to give you the list of cards that you might choose to run depending on your deck's color identity and depending on what Cyc Rift actually means for you in the context of your deck. Right here, Damn. This is one that is, if the big thing that you love about Cyclonic Rift is that it's versatile, that you can, for 2 mana, take out a single target, remove a single stacks piece that's giving you headaches, or if you have more mana and bigger headaches, you can overload it and get a bigger effect for more mana, then you might run Damn in its place. And for $1.91 and it not being anywhere near the Game Changers list, maybe that is a piece you could use to replace Cyclonic Rift. Now, you might say, well, yeah, but I have a bunch of creatures in play. I need to keep my creatures around. Maybe you're playing some kind of a... what comes to mind? Najeela the Blade Blossom. Najeela the Blade Blossom primarily would want to run Cyclonic Rift because when Najeela is trying to win with its warriors plan, it has to be able to swing through with a bunch of warriors. And when battlefields get all clogged up, it's got to be able to deal with that. So the thing that would appeal to Najeela, or lots of decks like Najeela, but the thing about Cyclonic Rift that would appeal to a lot of players would be the fact that it is asymmetrical, that it can wipe everybody else's board, but it won't wipe your board. In which case, we can still replace Cyclonic Rift with some budget alternatives, but we can't use Dam, because Dam's going to blow up Najeela's board too. So, we got a list of cards that can take the place of Cyclonic Rift, but none of them are going to be 1-for-1 substitutes. That's the idea. Dam definitely makes the list, but if you're in that more Najeela type situation where you have to just get rid of everybody's board, but keep your own intact, Winds of Abandon will do the job for you, sometimes better. For 6 mana, you overload this. Now, again, this keeps the versatility, the same versatility that you might have been happy to run Dam because you can use this as a 2 mana way to exile, not destroy, exile target creature you don't control. Or you can overload it and you can destroy, you can exile all of the creatures that you don't control. So here you get the versatility of Cyclonic Rift, and you get the the 3-sidedness of of Cyclonic Rift. So it's asymmetrical and it's versatile. It's not a bounce spell, but if you're just trying to clear a path so that you can get through with all of your creatures, you need to be able to do that in a way that kills or removes everybody's creatures other than yours. Dam doesn't do that. Winds of Abandon does that. So there's some different reasons that you might want to play Cyclonic Rift. Maybe you just need to find ways, like I was talking about my Malcolm Tana list. If I played a budget version of Malcolm Tana, while I can't play Winds of Abandon, I wouldn't want to play Dam, but I might look to a card like Runaway Together. For 2 cents, this could exactly solve the problem that I need Cyclonic Rift to solve for pennies, literally pennies on the dollar. Not even pennies on the dollar. Runaway Together, 2 mana. Instant speed, by the way. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players. So if one guy's got the Orcish Bowmasters, another guy has the Collector Oof, I can bounce both of those, and then I can go off with my combo. Runaway Together can also bounce your creature if you have an ETB that you want to re-trigger, while getting rid of one of your opponent's things that you'd rather get rid of. So it has a little bit of play to it that Cyclonic Rift doesn't even have. Desynchronization, I think, can often fit the bill. So if you're trying to find substitutes, if you're trying to find ways to get the same kind of effect out of your Cyclonic Rift, but you're trying to use a card that doesn't appear on the Game Changers list, so it's not quote pointed, and it's not $40, you're gonna have to figure out what that card actually means to you in the context of your deck and kind of go from there. So once you've figured it out, so talking about Urza again, in a budget Urza deck or in a bracket 3 Urza deck, or 4 or whatever, and I guess 3, I don't really know what all the brackets are. You may have picked up on that. Maybe in your version of Urza, desynchronization effectively is Cyclonic Rift, but it's not going to effectively be Cyclonic Rift for your Malcolm Tana deck, right? Like, desynchronization isn't going to do the trick for us, will it? Return each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand. No, because that would bounce my Glinthorn Buccaneer. but it won't, if you're playing Urza, it's not going to bounce your Urza. It's not going to bounce your artifacts, and maybe you don't care about anything but your artifacts and your Urza. It's going to leave all your Karn struck tokens that you've amassed. If you bounce your Urza, recast it, bounce it, recast it, it's going to leave maybe your entire board intact, but it's going to bounce everything that everybody else has, other than like their commanders and mana rocks. So maybe Desynchronization, which I think is a very powerful card that's been slept on for a long time, but I'm looking at its price tag now. I bought a bunch of these when they came out for like $1 a piece, expecting that eventually people were going to start playing it. What do you want out of a 4-mana instant? Like, this is pretty busted, but it's not going to be busted in every deck. But in the decks where it's busted, it's probably going to do a very good job of replacing Cyclonic Rift exactly. Now, some decks will just want... they just want a spell for a cheap price that is going to remove any non-land permanent. And really, there's historically been a big premium on that. But here, now we have it in this card, Into the Floodmaw. Sub $5 card. It's only gone up to $4 in the last couple of months when people started figuring out how damn busted this is. We've never had this effect at this price before. For 1 mana, we can return target non-land permanent. You can use it as an unsummon, and it is just unsummon. Bounce target creature, period, 1 mana, instant speed. But if you gift somebody a tapped fish, who gives a shit, right? You just give somebody a 1/1 tapped fish token. You can bounce target non-land permanent instead. Now, you can't bounce your own thing with it. That's the only... But you can't do that with Cyclonic Rift either. So a lot of decks, a lot of cEdh decks have started replacing Cyclonic Rift with Into the Floodmaw. A deck that's like trying to win the game on turn 3, right? They don't usually have enough time to get to overload Cyclonic Rift mana. But that's not really why they were using Cyclonic Rift. They might have been primarily using Cyclonic Rift to just bounce key pieces like stacks pieces that are stopping them from winning. If that's more what you're looking for to replace your Cyclonic Rift, Into the Floodmaw is a perfectly fine replacement. Some of the other cards on this list that I had on here are kind of representative as versions of Cyclonic Rift, depending on the context that you need the Cyclonic Rift in, would be This Town Ain't Big Enough. This does not read that good, but if you play this card, you will figure out this is a very powerful card. For 5 mana, which is less than an overloaded Cyclonic Rift, you get an instant speed spell that will return 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So that can do things that Runaway Together can't do, because maybe it's not a Collector Oof in an Orcish Bowmasters. Maybe you need to deal with a Null Rod in an Orcish Bowmasters, in which case This Town Ain't Big Enough will do that job for you for 5 mana. Now, granted, it's not going to clear everybody's boards in the way that a Cyclonic Rift would, but very often, this is going to do the exact job you need it to do. You can pinpoint 2 specific target non-land permanents and bounce them to their owner's hands for a lot less mana than it costs to overload a Cyclonic Rift. And in the situation I was talking about earlier with my Malcolm Tana deck, that's all I needed, right? And this really does come up for me often. Now, the other thing about This Town Ain't Big Enough is if you target one of your own things, so if you're playing in a deck where you have a lot of creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities, or maybe you're playing Brago, that's flickering things for value, so you've got a bunch of not just creatures, but a bunch of permanents with powerful ETBs, including, but not limited to, creatures with powerful ETBs, and you're thinking, what am I going to replace the Cyclonic Rift with? Well, this might actually be better than Cyclonic Rift in your deck, and I think that's not at all a stretch. I'll say there's a lot of cEdh decks that are playing this card right now, and I don't know that they're playing Cyclonic Rift. I'm thinking of Rogthras. Rograk and Thrasios plays most of those, a lot of those decks at least, play This Town Ain't Big Enough. If you're going to bounce one of your own permanents and then recast it for value to retrigger the ETB, This only costs 2 mana. So it will return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So you could bounce 2 of your own things in Brago. You can bounce 1 of your opponent's things and 1 of your things. If you do those, that costs 2 mana. So it's got kind of that versatility, the same way Cyclonic Rift does, where depending on how you need to use it, it might cost a lot of mana or it might cost a little mana. I think there were some other cards. Fire Covenant. This is another one. If you need that Cyclonic Rift effect in a deck like, what was I using as an example? Well, anything that's going to try to attack, and I guess you'd have to be in, well, at least red, black, and blue. So if you're a Grixis deck that cares about getting your creatures through in combat, if that's the reason you want the Cyclonic Rift, Fire Covenant might be better in your deck than Cyclonic Rift. And it's not a game changer. It can be a definite game changer in the kind of sort of semi-literal sense when you're playing the game. But it's not a game changer. It's not pointed. It can be a lot better than a Cyclonic Rift. This, for 3 mana, instant speed, that's a lot better than an overloaded Cyclonic Rift in terms of mana cost. You can pay however much life you want, and you can deal that amount of damage divided any way you want among any number of creatures. So it's like pinpoint. It's more pinpoint removal than what a Cyclonic Rift is. So you might be in a situation where some of your opponents are being kept in check by a couple of cards. Maybe you're playing against my Malcolm Tana deck or a Malcolm Tana deck, and you don't really care about the fact that there's a Collector Roof in play. Or maybe you like the fact that there's an Orcish Bowmasters in play. So you don't really want to get rid of that. But you do have some other pieces that you need to get rid of. Or you need to clear some of the board so you can get your warrior tokens through in your Najeela deck. Fire Covenant will allow you to get in there and remove exactly the pieces that you need to remove while keeping the other pieces in play that you don't need to remove. And instead of $40, it's $4. Let's talk about some non-Cyclonic Rift cards. Okay, Time Twister. I just want to kind of close the book on. This is it for $11.96. Echo of Eons is probably, in a lot of cases, going to be your best. It's going to be your best 1-for-1 exchange for Time Twister. If you literally need the Time Twister for all of the things that Time Twister does, if you need it as a 3-mana draw 7 some of the time, and in that same deck you are also doing Twister loops, where you actually need to shuffle your entire hand, graveyard, and library back into your deck and keep looping with infinite mana. Maybe you're playing like a $200. If you're playing the $100 version of budget Urza, win-conless Urza, instead of running Time Twister, you might have to play Midnight Clock along with your Hullbreaker Horror. If you're playing the $200 version, maybe you can spring for Echo of Eons. Let's look at... so we've talked about Time Twister, Cyclonic Rift, Rhystic Study. We didn't really get into Rhystic Study. Along the same lines as Rhystic Study, let's talk about Rhystic Study and the One Ring. Let's talk about draw engines. So if you're familiar with the way cEdh is going right now, basically since they got rid of all the fastest fast mana, the format has gone into a period of time that we're referring to as mid-range hell, where games are going very late. A lot of games are going to time. Very rarely nowadays do you see turn 2 and turn 3 actual wins. And if you have been paying attention to the Commander news, as it were, as of late, you will have heard, no doubt, about the 11-hour finals. I don't even think we want to talk about that. There was a finals match, and in cEdh tournaments, the finals are untimed. And the final match of this most recent, pretty big cEdh tournament, the final match went 11 hours. That didn't happen back when Dockside and Mana... Okay, anyway, not the point of the video. Burning Time. But I guess the point I was getting at is the meta has evolved or devolved into this all about draw engines. It's all about getting your heuristic study, or you either mulligan for heuristic study, or you mulligan for a tutor for your heuristic study, or you mulligan for something that isn't heuristic study but plays heuristic study on TV, or something that can steal somebody else's heuristic study or clone somebody else's heuristic study. So heuristic study is a card draw engine. The One Ring is a card draw engine. And so in this list of substitutes, you're going to find things like, obviously, Mystic Remora. Could not possibly forget about Mystic Remora. Boy, that thing's up to $7 now. So I think that's just showing you like where the Commander meta is going. But Mystic Remora is a pretty good... is this on the Game Changers list? Maybe that's why... Okay, I think this is a game changer. Is this a game changer? We're going to check the time again, pause the video, and find out. Wow, it is not a game changer. Okay, well, it ought to be one. So yeah, this goes right back into the list of replacements for your heuristic study. Yeah, depending on your exact meta, Mystic Remora and your deck, Mystic Remora could not just be a budget replacement for heuristic study, and it might not just be a budget replacement and one that doesn't have game changer status, so it's not pointed, but it might actually be the better, more powerful draw engine in your deck and in your meta. In a deck like Brago, where you can keep flickering this thing, or in a deck like Muldrotha, if you're playing Muldrotha and you can cast this from your graveyard every turn. Or what's that, the new Keeper of... there's a... can't think of the name of it. There's a kind of a new-ish... I mean, it's probably about a year old now. Master of Keys. Master of Keys is a commander, black, blue, white commander that will allow you to cast the Mystic Remora out of your graveyard every turn. So Mystic Remora is a fantastic replacement for heuristic study. Not pointed, much less expensive, can be better in your deck, can be a better card in your meta. Obviously, if your meta is just creatures, mostly creatures, then it's probably not going to be as good. But I would actually, most of the time, in like tournament level commander, I would probably mostly prefer to start the game with Mystic Remora than heuristic study. That becomes less and less true as time goes on. Probably a couple of years ago, I would have just straight up argued and said that Mystic Remora is a better card than heuristic study, but now that there are so many creatures in the meta, I could actually see a pretty good argument for heuristic study. In any case, Remora... Oh wait, this is not the game changer. This is supposed to be in the game changer substitutes. Damn it, I did leave it in there. Okay, so you get the idea. Mystic Remora is a very good way to replace heuristic study. If you're playing it against a bunch of money pals at your local LGS and you're just trying to compete without spending $40 on your own copy of heuristic study, get a Remora. Get a Mirror Maid. Mirror Maid for 75 cents comes down and copies your opponent's draw engines. And it can copy either a Mystic Remora, or it can copy a heuristic study, or it can copy whatever the most beneficial, effective, the most powerful one given the situation that you're in currently. Mirror Maid can be that card. And if nobody has a draw engine, then at least you're not the only one with no draw engine. But when the whole table is playing their draw engines out and you don't have a draw engine, your Mirror Maid can come down and put you right in the game for 75 cents instead of $40. Another one, now, I bought a bunch of these recently. I'd never heard of the card until maybe a few months ago, and then I bought a bunch of them thinking as soon as people start hearing about this card, they're going to buy it, and it's going to go up in value, go up in price, and it exactly did do that, but it's still a lot less than a heuristic study, and it's not on the Game Changers list. Psychic Possession. So you play this for 4 mana. You enchant an opponent. It says you skip your draw step, but that doesn't matter very much in this case. It says whenever enchanted opponent draws a card, you may draw a card. And so it doesn't matter that you're skipping your draw step, because you're not skipping your opponent's draw step. And they're actually going to have their draw step. I mean, most of the time you're going to be playing this on your turn. So whichever player you choose, they're going to have their draw step before you would get your next draw step anyway. So no harm, no foul there, right? I think this was just a way to kind of curb the power level a little bit, because if it didn't have you skip your draw step, it would be totally absurd. But I don't think it's that much less absurd skipping your draw step. If you have an opponent that has, like, maybe they've got a Mystic Remora and a Rhystic Study and a Mirror Maid copying their own, whichever one, or like a Remora and an Esper Sentinel, or a couple of draw engines anyway. Or if they've got Tymna and Crom and they're both in play, and they've got a fish out, Remora out. Psychic Possession is going to be the best of all the engines. You play this and you choose your Tymna Crom blue farm opponent, and now every time they draw a card, you draw a card, just period. Now that also doesn't, if you do find your own Remora or your own Mirror Maid, this doesn't stop you from drawing off of your engines. It just stops you from drawing on your draw step, but you're going to draw on their draw step. So if Tymna is on the field with, Sakashima, copying the Tymna, and they've got a bunch of evasive threats, and they're drawing 6 cards on every combat, or they just have like a Tymna and Delny, and they're drawing 6 cards on every combat, and a card for turn, and they've got a draw engine like an Esper Sentinel that's drawing an average of 2 cards per turn. Well, this Psychic Possession comes down and it effectively copies all of them in one fell swoop. Psychic Possession is an absolutely busted card. It's 4 mana. It's a little bit less efficient than some of the other engines that are more commonly played in cEdh. But it'll get you there. It'll do all the things you need a draw engine to do and then some. Psychic Possession, $16. It's getting up there. I think I got mine for $6 a piece. I bought 4 of them. Verity Circle. Now this used to be a cEdh, I don't know if I want to say staple, but it used to see pretty serious play in cEdh. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. Now, back in the day, we're talking like pre-Dockside, the best decks in the format were, I keep wanting to say Turbo Hulk, not Turbo Hulk, Flash Hulk. Were Flash Hulk decks like TNT, Tymna, and Thrasios. Well, we are back to the point in time where everybody's playing dorks again. So if you're in a dork heavy meta where there's a lot of green in your locals, or if you're going to a tournament or you're playing in a league and you expect to see a lot of green decks play dorks. And Verity Circle doesn't punish them exactly, but it rewards you for them drawing, or from them having the balls to get ahead on mana once Wizards of the Coast, no, not Wizards of the Coast, the old Guard Rules Committee made it perfectly clear that we're not supposed to be doing anything fast, damn it. So if they want to play their green dorks out and try to break the speed limit, Verity Circle will allow you to draw full grips of cards because of it. This is a really powerful card for budget competitive. If you're playing in a league or a tournament with a $100 cap on it, like if you're playing on, I'm not doing real well with words right now, sorry. If you come into our Discord, the Stomping Grounds, and we get a game going on Spell Table, normally the budget that we stick to is $100 Moxfield. Moxfield low. $100 max, Moxfield low. Verity Circle will draw you a ton of cards in that meta, in that environment. It's a pretty reasonable substitute when you can't afford to play cards like Rhystic Study. Were there any other draw engines? Oh yeah, so we were talking too about the One Ring specifically. The reason I'm going to say that is because I play that Malcolm Tana deck as my main tournament deck for cEdh, for tEdh, however you want to say it. And I don't play the One Ring in that deck, but I took it out for Orin Frostfang and never looked back. Well, I have looked back. I have gone through periods where I've had Frostfang and the Ring, Frostfang or the Ring, Frostfang, Toski, and the Ring, or any combination therein. And what I've eventually landed on is that Orin Frostfang draws more cards than a fair One Ring, in my deck anyway. If you're playing a Dork deck and you don't have like Seedborn or Manamu, if you don't have ways to go, if you don't have ways to untap the Ring, if you don't have ways to cheat with it, if you're just playing the One Ring as a, or you would just be playing the One Ring as just a fair value engine where it's going to come down, it's going to draw one card on turn one, it's going to draw one card the first turn you play it, and it's going to draw you 2 cards on the second turn, and 3 cards on the third. It's going to take a long time for that to make up for the amount of card advantage that you get out of your Orin Frostfang, and this usually delivers those cards a lot faster. Malcolm Tana, usually I'm starting the game with a Mana Dork. I'm obviously playing my Evasive Pirates and my Malcolm. So most of the time, if I slap down my Orin Frostfang, I've got 3 or 4 evasive creatures in play aside from it. I'm immediately drawing 3 or 4 cards the turn it hits play. Then I'm going to draw like 3, 4, or 5 cards on the next turn because I'm going to attack with the Orin Frostfang also. Orin Frostfang in a lot of decks is just going to be better than the One Ring. Maybe in some decks it could even be, and in some metas, better than Rhystic Study. And that might be a bold statement, but maybe Animar. In Animar, it is better than Rhystic Study. I betcha. Runic Armasaur, kind of the same idea. In a lot of metas, in a lot of situations, in a lot of decks, this is going to be a pretty darn good replacement for the One Ring or a fair Necro. Now, if we're thinking along the lines of a more like unfair Necro, where we're looking to drop Necropotence and pay a bunch of life and win the game with a Flash Enabler, or cast take an extra turn after this, and then Necro for 30, sculpt a perfect hand, and take your, like, cheat your second turn, your next turn in, and win on that turn, then you can use a card like Peer into the Abyss. Peer into the Abyss can be a very good substitute for Ad Nauseam, and this is not on the Game Changers list, and it's $2.70. And it's usually oftentimes people don't cast Ad Nauseam at instep anyway. If you're an Ad Nauseam deck filled with a bunch of rituals, very often the play pattern is going to be like main phase Ad Naus, try to win the game. Sometimes you can whiff on an Ad Naus. It is damn near impossible to whiff on a Peer into the Abyss. If you can go instead of 5 mana, if you can get to 7, draw half your deck. It is very difficult, if you've built your deck around it, to whiff when you draw half your deck. So Peer into the Abyss can kind of replace the unfair Necros, and it can kind of replace the Ad Nauseams. And those other effects can sort of replace the fair versions of that effect. Stinging Study, depending on how big your commander is, can kind of be the same thing. That can do a pretty good impression of Ad Nauseam if you're playing a very high CMC commander. This is taking longer than I expected it to. We might have to do another parter. Might turn this into a multi-parter. Because I think otherwise I'm going to be firing through and not really spending the amount of time on the rest of these substitutes and why I think they're good substitutes. Necrologia, this can be that one-shot instant speed during your discard step, or you can, if you're playing the Flash Enablers, or if you've cast your Warrior's Oaths, you're going to get an extra turn. You go to your in-step, you cast your Necrologia, pay 30 life, dig 30 cards deep, sculpt a perfect hand, go to your next extra turn, win the game on the spot, or cast Born Upon a Wind or any of the Flash Enablers, and just sculpt a win on the instep. Check the time again here. Yeah. Dang, man. Okay, we were just getting to some of the fun stuff. I don't know. Do I want to just try to turbo through this? Let's just turbo through. Okay, so we've got Force of Will, Deflecting Swat. Force of Will and Deflecting Swat can be replaced depending on the context. We've already talked about all the context things, so you know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about context. If you have a 4 power commander, Bolt Bend is very, very close to a Deflecting Swat. 1 mana, Crimea River. It's 1 red mana, D-Swat. If you're playing a Yuriko deck or any kind of deck that draws a ton of cards and is mostly bottlenecked on mana, not bottlenecked at all on cards, Commandeer can be better than Force of Will. Because with Commandeer, you get to gain control of that non-creature spell. So it just says you can exile 2 blue cards rather than pay its cost, gain control of target non-creature spell. You may choose new targets for it. So you get that spell. And it doesn't say non-permanent either. So keep that in mind. If somebody casts a One Ring, you can commandeer that thing. That is not a creature. That is your One Ring. What else? Disrupting Shoal. This has been very cheap in past. It's gone way up and then come down to like a reasonable price. If you're playing in a mono blue deck, Disrupting Shoal can be very, very close to Force of Will. And it's much, much cheaper, and it's not a game changer. Flare of Denial can be straight up better than Force of Will. If you're playing in that Yuriko, or you're playing, a 1 mana commander that's blue, or you're playing a deck that has a bunch of 1 mana cards in it, you're playing a Malcolm deck with a bunch of 1 mana pirates, Flare of Denial might well be better than Force of Will. Foil may not be better than, but can be close to as good as, and is 61 cents. Flare of Duplication. In a lot of decks, this is better or close to as good as Deflecting Swat. It's $1.14. Roger decks, Rograg decks. Divert does a lot of the things that you want out of your Deflecting Swat. If you're playing in a very mana-efficient deck against a lot of mana-efficient decks, 1 mana D-Swat under a lot of circumstances. Replacing fast mana in general. Tutors. I'm going to do the tutors and fast mana in one shot here. Survival of the Fittest actually does have a pretty close to 1-for-1 swap. If you're playing on a budget, you can play in its place. Did I forget to put it on? Oh, here it is. Fauna Shaman. This is just kind of like more fair, but still very good. Easier to tutor. Survival of the Fittest. All of your creature tutors hit this. It has Summoning Sickness, and you can only do it once per turn. Other than that, it is a Survival of the Fittest. If you're looking to replace your Mox Diamond, or Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal does a pretty good impression. Jeweled Amulet's pretty close. Honestly, like Chrome Mox, yeah, you can use it every turn, but it costs you a card. You're 2-for-1ing yourself for that little burst of mana. Lotus Petal, it's just going to cost you the 1 card instead of costing you 2 cards, but it's temporary. But sometimes, depending on the trade-off, that can be better or worse. Maybe in a Malcolm deck, you'd rather have Lotus Petal, because once you get your Malcolm out, you're not going to be too worried about mana. Maybe the same with Jeweled Amulet. So those are some game changer changers, some changers for the game changers. Tinderwall, super, super good card. You can sit this down and use it when you need, or it can be a ritual on the turn that you play it. So this can be a very good substitute for some of your fast mana. Orcish Lumberjack. If you had to take Chrome Mox out of your Corvold deck, and because of that you had to look for alternatives, and you put Orcish Lumberjack in your deck instead, your deck probably just got better. Orcish Lumberjack is jacked. This is turns your forest into like literally, I was gonna say better than, it turns your forests into cards that are better than Black Lotus, assuming you've got them in play. You can tap the forest for a mana, then you can sack it with Orcish Lumberjack for 3 mana. You get 4 mana off of each forest. This, I mean, in any Gruul Plus deck, this card is very, very good. And exactly Corvold, it's ban-worthy. If we're looking to replace exactly Jessica's Will, Namesticker Goblin is does a pretty good job. 3 mana, same casting cost, and it's just as like abusable as all the creatures. Well, it's abusable in that it's a creature. You can flicker it. You can bounce it to your hand and recast it. You can reuse it in all the sneaky ways you can reuse a Dockside Extortionist. Yeah, I think we're past the point of doing this as a two-parter, but we're maybe like, maybe you're going to have to read. I'll link both of these lists. You might have to use your imagination for some of this. We're looking at how to replace Ancient Tomb. Ancient Tomb is a soul land. We've got soul lands. Crystal Vein, Dwarven Ruins. There's a version of the depletion land Sapraz and Scary for every color for every color. These come into play tapped, but you can tap them, remove a counter. There's 2 counters on it when it comes into play, and when you remove the counter, you add 2 colored mana. These are really good. I play these in some cEdh decks. So Ancient Tomb can be replaced by Dwarven Ruins, Crystal Vein, and/or Sapraz and Scary, depending on exactly how you want to use it. You might end up putting all of these cards in your Izzet deck. I think I play all 3 of these exactly in my $100 Malcolm Kedis list. Then we're just left with the tutors, right? Yeah, I think we basically did it. I think we basically got there. Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, tutors. We've got some, and also fast mana, we've got Dorks. You can play Dorks. Or Strike It Rich. This is the cheapest version of this card, but it's not the easiest to recognize. But what was that price tag? This thing got cheap. $3.78 for the cheapest version of this. Again, in Corvold, this might even be better than, like just straight up strictly better than, well, not strictly, might be straight up better than Demonic Tutor. And it's not on the Game Changers list, and it's $3.78. It is just, as an additional cost, you sacrifice a creature, which in Corvold, with your commander out, means you draw a card. And it's a Demonic Tutor after that. $3.78. Sometimes Wishclaw Talisman is better than Demonic Tutor. It's got political implications. You can kind of trick people with it. You can play your opposition agent. You can use the Wishclaw Talisman to find your oppo. Hold on to it and wait for your opponent to use whatever, to use the tutor when you give them the tutor. Flash in your opposition agent and, blow them out. You can get 2 tutors with this tutor at the price of giving somebody 1 tutor, which I would argue is better than 1 tutor. So you can say, like, look, I promise, or if you promise to give me the Wishclaw back after you use it, I'll give you the Wishclaw. And most people will make that deal with you. And you can sometimes just play this out early for 2 mana. And then on the turn where you're ready to win the game, you only have to pay 1 mana to go and find your Ad Nauseam or Thassa's Oracle or Laboratory Maniac or whatever. So yeah, there's tons, and I don't think it's going to be that complicated or difficult to find substitutions for tutors, but I thought I probably ought to put some on the list anyway. Delayed Blast Fireball I was using as kind of a stand-in some decks, in some metas, in some situations for some reasons. As a replacement for Cyclonic Rift. It's got some Cyclonic Rifty vibes. Misdirection obviously is very similar to Force of Will, very similar to Deflecting Swat. It's kind of like if Force of Will and Deflecting Swat had a baby, but it's only $5 and it's not a game changer. Did I get through it? Return the Favor. It's got some D-SWAT vibes, but it's also got versatility. If you're in a red deck, if you're in mono red or like a gruel deck, and you're trying to find some interaction, and you're like, damn, I just don't have any useful pieces of interaction because I can't play deflecting swap because it's $1 billion and or because it's a game changer. Return the favor or untimely malfunction are very good. They're very good. And, you know, they're definitely sub $5. $1.12, $2.56. Ricochet Trap is going to be a 4 mana or like probably the best thing if you're using it in a high power cEdh context about deflecting SWAT is that it can counter spells. Well, Ricochet Trap can do that for 1 red mana. Or you can just change the target of a single target with a single target. Somebody casts a bounce spell on your thing, 1 red mana, you can not only stop them from bouncing your thing, but you can cause them to bounce their thing. That's pretty much the list, guys. We did it. Did we do it? I think we did it. Yeah, Curiosity I had on here as Draw Engine. In Malcolm Kedis, this is probably at least as good as the One Ring most of the time. Put this on your Malcolm or your Lightning Rig crew. And then you're going to draw at least 3 cards a turn off of it. That's my list, guys. Got through it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. I never say that. I never remember to say that because I'm always trying to think of who we're going to word in the video. So word to your mothers. Word to your fathers. East side until the day I die on the west side. May all your outs be live. To all the women you loved before. All of the things that I always say and more. May peace be with you. And also with you. But mostly you. And not you. Definitely not you. And actually, holy fuck you. You know you are. Namaste, nerds.